They say your first day at a new job is just about learning names and finding the bathroom. They're lying. My first day ended with a gun to my head and the most dangerous man in the city kneeling at my feet. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The water was freezing when I pulled little Mia from the river that morning. November in Chicago doesn't forgive, and the current had dragged her 20 feet from where she'd fallen through the rotted pier. My lungs burned. My fingers were numb, but I had her. 5 years old, lips blue, eyes wide with terror, and I wasn't letting go. I didn't know she was Dante Moretti's daughter. I didn't know that saving her would destroy my life and rebuild it into something I couldn't recognize. I just knew she was drowning, and I was the only one who'd jumped in. The paramedic said another minute and she would have been gone. Her nanny, some expensive woman in designer clothes, had been screaming on the shore, useless. I'd been walking to my third job interview that week, wearing my mother's old coat because it was the only one I owned, when I heard the splash and the screams. Mia coughed up river water all over my coat. I'd never been so grateful for anything in my life. "Thank you," she whispered, her small hand gripping my frozen fingers. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I didn't know those would be the only words she'd speak for the next 6 months. 2 days later, I was standing in the marble foyer of the Moretti estate, dripping rainwater onto floors that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. My mother's coat, the one she'd died in 6 months ago, the one I'd worn because I had nothing else, was torn at the shoulder from where I'd caught it on the pier. My shoes had holes. My hair was pulled back in a rubber band because I'd sold all my hair ties to buy bread. I looked like exactly what I was. A 23-year-old woman with $17 to her name and a debt collector who'd promised to break my legs if I didn't pay him $3,000 by the end of the week. "Mr. Moretti will see you now," the butler said, his voice dripping with disdain. He looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe. I followed him through hallways lined with art that could have fed my neighborhood for a year. Everything was cold. Marble and chrome and recessed lighting that made the whole place feel like a beautiful mausoleum. I counted my steps to keep from panicking. 147 steps from the front door to the office where Dante Moretti waited. I'd seen his picture in the papers. They called him a businessman and a philanthropist, but everyone in Chicago knew the truth. Dante Moretti owned half the city, the half that operated after dark, where money flowed through channels the IRS would never trace. He was 34 years old and had built an empire on the bones of men who'd underestimated him. The pictures didn't do him justice. He stood by the window, 6 feet of controlled violence in a suit that probably cost more than my yearly income when I'd had an income. Dark hair, gray eyes like a winter storm, and a scar along his jaw that should have made him less attractive, but somehow didn't. He didn't turn when I entered. "You saved my daughter's life," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something raw and barely contained. "Anyone would have done the same," I replied. "They didn't." He turned then, and those gray eyes pinned me in place. 7 people stood on that pier. You were the only one who jumped. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. "I've had you investigated, Miss Chen." He walked to his desk, pulled out a file. My file. Parents deceased. Father when you were 12, mother 6 months ago. No siblings. Worked 3 jobs to care for your mother during her illness. Currently unemployed. Currently... He paused, and something flickered across his face. Currently being threatened by a loan shark named Vincent Russo. $3,000 owed. Payment due in 5 days. My cheeks burned. "I don't need charity." "Good. I'm not offering any." He closed the file. I'm offering you a job. I'm not qualified to work for someone like you. You're qualified to do exactly what I need." He moved closer, and I forced myself not to step back. "My daughter hasn't spoken since you pulled her from that river. The doctors say it's trauma-induced selective mutism. She won't eat, won't sleep, won't let anyone touch her except—" He stopped, and for just a second, the controlled mask slipped. I saw fear. Raw, parental fear. "Except she keeps asking for you. In writing, over and over. The lady from the water. The lady who didn't let go." My throat tightened. "Your mother was my head maid for 15 years, he continued. "She died before she could train a replacement. I want you to take her position." I stared at him. "My mother worked for you?" "You didn't know." It wasn't a question. "She said she worked for a family in Lake Forest. She never said—" I stopped. Of course she hadn't. My mother had kept me as far from this world as possible. She'd taken the train 2 hours each way, worked 12-hour days, and never once brought her work home. She'd kept me clean, safe, separate. And now I was standing in the center of everything she'd protected me from. "I can't," I said. "You can't afford not to." He pulled out a check, slid it across the desk. "Signing bonus. Enough to pay off Russo and cover your rent for 6 months. Salary is $150,000 a year. Full benefits. You live here. Your mother had a suite in the East Wing. It's been maintained." I looked at the check. $15,000. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. "Why?" I asked. "You could hire anyone. Someone qualified. Someone who knows this world." "Because my daughter trusts you," he said simply. "And I trust my daughter's instincts more than I trust anything else in this world." I thought about the debt collector's last visit, the way he'd grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise, the way he'd smiled when he told me what would happen if I didn't pay. I thought about my empty refrigerator and the eviction notice on my door. I thought about little Mia's hand gripping mine. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "When do I start?" I asked. "Now." That was 3 hours ago. Now I was standing in a bedroom that was bigger than my entire apartment had been, wearing clothes that actually fit for the first time in months, trying to process the fact that my life had completely changed in the span of a heartbeat. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called. A woman entered, mid-50s, steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that assessed and judged in the same glance. She wore a crisp black dress and an expression that suggested she'd smelled something unpleasant. "I'm Mrs. Castellano," she said. "Head of household staff. I'll be training you." "I thought my mother was head of household staff." "Your mother is dead." She said it without inflection, without sympathy. "I've held the position for the past 6 months. Mr. Moretti has decided to demote me to train you. I'm sure you can imagine how pleased I am about that." I could imagine it very clearly. "I'll try not to waste your time," I said. "You'll fail, but we'll proceed anyway." She turned toward the door. "Mr. Moretti wants you to meet Mia before dinner. I'll show you to her room." We walked through more hallways, past more art and expensive furniture, and windows that overlooked gardens I'd only seen in magazines. Mrs. Castellano walked fast, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. "Your mother understood her place," she said without looking at me. "She knew the rules. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Don't involve yourself in family business. She lasted 15 years because she was invisible when she needed to be. I'll keep that in mind. Will you?" She stopped, turned to face me. Because from where I'm standing, you've already broken every rule. You're not invisible. You're not qualified. And you're only here because a traumatized child has latched onto you like a life raft. She leaned closer. Children are fickle, Miss Chen. When Mia moves on, you'll have nothing. No skills, no experience, no place here. I'd start planning your exit now. Before I could respond, she turned and continued walking. Mia's room was at the end of the east wing. Mrs. Castellano knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for a response. The room was beautiful. All soft colors and expensive toys and furniture designed to look like a fairy tale. But the little girl sitting in the window seat looked like she'd been carved from ice. She wore a white dress that probably cost more than my signing bonus. Her dark hair was perfectly brushed. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked like a doll, a beautiful, empty doll. Then she saw me. The change was instantaneous. Her eyes widened. Color flooded her pale cheeks. She scrambled off the window seat and ran, actually ran, across the room and threw herself at me. I caught her reflexively, dropping to my knees so we were eye level. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder, and I felt her whole body shaking. "Hey," I whispered. "Hey, it's okay. I've got you." She pulled back just enough to look at me, and I saw tears streaming down her face. She reached for the notebook on her bed, scribbled something quickly, and held it up. "You came back." My heart cracked. "Of course I came back." She wrote again. "You didn't let go." "Never," I promised. "I'll never let go." She launched herself at me again, and I held her, this tiny, broken thing, and felt something shift in my chest. Some wall I'd built after my mother died, some protection against caring too much, crumbled. I looked up and found Dante standing in the doorway. I didn't know how long he'd been there. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were clenched at his sides. "She hasn't let anyone hold her since the accident," he said quietly. "Not even me." Mia didn't acknowledge her father. She just held on tighter. "I'll give you some time," he said, and left. Mrs. Castellano followed, but not before shooting me a look that could have stripped paint. I sat on the floor with Mia in my lap and let her cry. I didn't try to shush her or tell her it would be okay. I just held her and let her feel whatever she needed to feel. Eventually, the tears stopped. She pulled back, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and reached for her notebook again. "Will you stay?" she wrote. "Yes," I said. "I'll stay." She wrote something else, hesitated, then showed me. "My mama died too." I hadn't known that. Dante hadn't mentioned it. But looking at this little girl, this 5-year-old who'd lost her mother and nearly died herself, I understood. I understood the fear in Dante's eyes. I understood why he'd offered me a fortune to stay. "I know," I said softly. "My mama died too. 6 months ago." Mia's eyes widened. She wrote quickly. "Does it stop hurting?" I could have lied. I could have told her what adults always told children, that time heals all wounds, that it gets better, that the pain fades. But I'd learned that sometimes the truth was kinder. "No," I said, "it doesn't stop hurting. But you learn to carry it, and some days the good memories are stronger than the hurt." She considered this, then nodded slowly. She wrote one more thing. "I'm glad you didn't die in the water." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." We sat together until the light outside started to fade. Mia showed me her toys, expensive things she clearly had no interest in, and her books, and her collection of rocks from the garden. She didn't speak, but she communicated perfectly through her notebook and her expressions. She was brilliant, funny, desperately lonely. When dinner was called, she took my hand and wouldn't let go. We walked to the dining room together, and I tried not to feel like I was walking into a lion's den. The dining room was exactly what I expected: massive table, crystal chandelier, place settings that probably required a manual to navigate properly. Dante sat at the head of the table. A teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17, sat to his right, watching me with undisguised curiosity. "This is Marco," Dante said. "My nephew. He lives here." Marco grinned. "So you're the girl who dove into the river. Uncle Dante said you didn't even hesitate." "There wasn't time to hesitate," I said. "Most people find time." He looked at Mia, and his expression softened. "Hey, Piccola, you eating tonight?" Mia shook her head and pressed closer to me. "She'll eat when she's ready," Dante said quietly. "Sit, Miss Chen. You're family now." I sat, Mia climbing into the chair beside me. A woman brought out food: roasted chicken, vegetables, bread that smelled like heaven. I tried to remember which fork to use and when. "Don't worry about the etiquette," Dante said, watching me. "We're not that formal here." "Could have fooled me," I muttered before I could stop myself. Marco laughed. "I like her." Dante's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Your mother said the same thing on her first day. She told me my house had more forks than sense." "She said that?" I couldn't imagine my quiet, careful mother saying something so bold. "She said a lot of things, usually when she thought I was being an idiot." He cut his chicken with precise movements. "She was usually right." We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Mia tugged on my sleeve and held up her notebook. "Can you cut my chicken?" I cut her chicken into small pieces. She ate one bite, then another. By the end of dinner, she'd eaten half her plate, more than she'd eaten in days, according to the relieved look on Dante's face. After dinner, I helped Mia get ready for bed. She had a bathroom bigger than my old apartment, with a tub that could have fit 4 people. She picked out pajamas, soft pink ones with stars, and let me help her change. I read her 3 stories. She fell asleep halfway through the 3rd one, her hand wrapped around my finger. I tried to pull away, but her grip tightened even in sleep. "You can stay." I looked up. Dante stood in the doorway again, silent as a ghost. "I don't want to wake her," I said quietly. "There's a chair. It reclines." He moved into the room, pulled a chair close to the bed. "She sleeps better when someone's here." "You stay with her?" "Every night since the accident." He looked at his daughter, and the mask slipped again. I saw love. Fierce, desperate, overwhelming love. "I'm not very good at it. I answer emails, make calls. I'm here, but I'm not present." "You're here," I said. "That's what matters." "Is it?" He looked at me then, really looked at me. "You held her for 2 hours today. She smiled. I haven't seen her smile in 6 months. She just needs time. She needs a mother." The words came out harsh, almost angry. "She needs someone who knows how to... I don't know how to do this. I know how to run an empire. I know how to make men fear me. But I don't know how to help my daughter sleep through the night." I didn't know what to say to that level of raw honesty from a man who probably never showed weakness. "I'll stay tonight," I said finally. "With Mia. You should sleep." "I don't sleep much anymore." "Then you should try." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you, Miss Chen. Elena, I said. If I'm going to be living here, you should call me Elena. Elena. He tested the name, and I tried not to notice the way it sounded in his voice. Thank you. He left, and I settled into the chair. It did recline. I pulled a blanket over myself and watched Mia sleep. I thought about my mother, working in this house for 15 years, walking these halls, caring for this family. Had she sat in this chair? Had she read Mia bedtime stories? Had she loved them? I fell asleep wondering if I was following in my mother's footsteps or walking into a trap she'd spent her whole life protecting me from. I woke to screaming. Mia was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror, screaming without sound. Her mouth was open, her face was red, but no noise came out except desperate, hitching breaths. I was at her side in seconds, pulling her into my arms. It's okay, baby. It's okay. You're safe. You're safe. She clawed at me, fighting against memories I couldn't see. The door slammed open. Dante ran in, followed by Marco and two men I didn't recognize. Security, probably. They all stopped when they saw me holding Mia. Nightmare, I said. She's okay. But she wasn't okay. She was shaking so hard I thought she might break apart. Mia, Dante said, moving closer. Piccola, it's Papa. You're safe. She didn't seem to hear him. She buried her face in my shoulder and held on like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I started humming. I don't know why. It was a song my mother used to sing when I was scared, some old Chinese lullaby about the moon and stars. I didn't remember all the words, so I just hummed the melody. Slowly, gradually, Mia's breathing evened out. Her grip loosened. She pulled back enough to look at me, tears streaming down her face. I wiped them away with my thumbs. Bad dream? She nodded. Want to tell me about it? She reached for her notebook with shaking hands. The water. I can't breathe. I'm sinking and no one comes. But someone did come, I said gently. I came, and I'll always come, okay? She wrote again. Promise? I promise. She looked past me to her father, wrote something else and held it up so he could see. Why didn't you jump? The words hit like bullets. I saw Dante flinch, saw the color drain from his face. I wasn't there, he said, his voice rough. I was in a meeting. If I had been there... But you're never there, she wrote. You're always in meetings. Mia. She turned away from him, pressed her face back into my shoulder. The dismissal was complete. Dante stood frozen, and I saw something break in his eyes. He looked at me, this stranger who'd known his daughter for less than a day, and I saw the question he couldn't ask. What do I do? I didn't have an answer. He left without another word. Marco followed, but not before giving me a look that was half gratitude, half warning. The security guards retreated. I held Mia until she fell back asleep, then laid her down gently. This time, when I tried to pull away, she let me go. I found Dante in his office at 3 a.m. He sat behind his desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at nothing. You should be with Mia, he said without looking up. She's asleep. I have a baby monitor. I held up the device one of the staff had given me. You don't have to check on me. I'm not checking on you. I'm telling you that your daughter is 5 years old and she's terrified and she's lashing out at the safest target she has. I'm not safe? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm the most dangerous man in Chicago. Exactly. which means she knows on some level that you can handle her anger. She can't hurt you. I moved closer. She's not really mad at you for not being at the pier. She's mad that her mother died. She's mad that she almost died. She's mad that the world isn't safe anymore, and you're the only person she can be mad at. She won't even let me touch her. She will. Give her time. I don't know how much time I have. He finally looked at me, and I saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face. There are people who want to hurt me, who would hurt her to get to me. The accident, it wasn't an accident. The words hung in the air like smoke. What? The pier. Someone cut through the supports. The nanny who was supposed to be watching her? She was paid to look the other way. His hand tightened around the glass. Someone tried to kill my daughter. I sat down before my legs gave out. Does Mia know? No, and she won't. Not until I find who did this and make sure they can never hurt her again. Do you know who? I have suspicions, but no proof. Not yet. He drained the whiskey. This is why I need you here. You saved her once. I need you to keep saving her. Keep her safe. Keep her alive until I can eliminate the threat. I'm not a bodyguard. No, you're better. You're someone she trusts. He stood, moved to the window. I can surround her with armed guards. I can lock down this house like a fortress, but I can't make her feel safe. You can. Why do you think that? Because when she's with you, she doesn't look over her shoulder. She doesn't flinch at loud noises. She's just a little girl. He turned back to me. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? I thought about Mia's hand in mine, the way she'd smiled when I cut her chicken, the way she'd fallen asleep holding my finger. I'll keep her safe, I said, but you need to do something for me. Name it. Be there. Not in meetings, not on calls, actually there. Because I can keep her alive, but you're her father. She needs you. She doesn't want me. She wants you so much, it's killing her that she can't have you. I stood, faced him across the expensive desk. She's 5. She doesn't know how to say, I need you to choose me over your work. So she pushes you away and hopes you'll fight to stay. And every time you don't fight, it confirms what she's afraid of, that she's not enough, that she's not worth it. She's worth everything. Then show her. We stared at each other across the desk, and I saw the moment something shifted, some decision made. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. I left him there and went back to Mia's room, crawled back into the chair, pulled the blanket up. I'd been in this house for less than 24 hours, and I'd already learned more secrets than I knew what to do with. Someone had tried to kill a 5-year-old girl. I was supposed to keep her safe from an enemy I couldn't see. And I was starting to care about this broken family more than was probably wise. I fell asleep thinking about my mother, wondering if this was how it had started for her, too. Wondering if she'd meant to stay for 15 years, or if she'd just kept choosing to stay, one day at a time, until suddenly 15 years had passed. Wondering if I was making the same choice. The next morning, I woke to find Mia standing beside my chair, holding her notebook. Good morning, it said. Can we have pancakes? I smiled. We can have anything you want. She wrote again. Can Papa have pancakes with us? I think that's a great idea. We found Dante in his office, already on a phone call. He held up one finger, 1 minute. Mia walked right up to his desk and held up her notebook. Pancakes, now, Please." Dante looked at the note, then at his daughter, then at me standing in the doorway. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and hung up without waiting for a response. Mia's eyes widened. She wrote quickly, "You hung up. You asked me to have pancakes. That's more important." She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then, slowly, she held out her hand. Dante took it like it was made of glass. We had pancakes, the three of us plus Marco, who wandered in still half asleep and stole food off everyone's plates. The cook, a woman named Rosa who had worked for the family for 20 years, made enough pancakes to feed an army and beamed when Mia ate 3. It was almost normal, almost like a family. Then Mrs. Castellano appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Moretti, there's a situation that requires your attention." "I'm having breakfast with my daughter." "It's urgent." "Then it can wait 30 minutes. Mrs. Castellano's lips thinned, but she nodded and left. Mia wrote in her notebook, "You're staying?" "I'm staying," Dante confirmed. She wrote something else, hesitated, then showed him. "I'm sorry I said you're never here." "You weren't wrong." He set down his fork. "I haven't been here enough. I'm going to do better." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded and went back to her pancakes. After breakfast, Dante disappeared into his office with Mrs. Castellano. I took Mia to the garden, a sprawling thing with fountains and sculptures and flowers that shouldn't have been blooming in November, but were anyway. Mia collected rocks and showed me her favorite spots. We found a bench by a fountain, and she climbed into my lap with her notebook. "Do you miss your mama?" she wrote. "Every day," I said honestly. "What do you miss most?" I thought about it. The way she hummed when she cooked. The way she always knew when I needed a hug, even when I pretended I didn't. The way she made everything feel safer just by being there. Mia nodded, wrote again. "I miss my mama's voice. I can't remember it anymore." My heart broke. "How long has she been gone?" 2 years. I was 3. "Papa says I look like her." "I bet you do." She leaned back against me, and we sat in silence for a while. Then she wrote something else. "I'm scared I'll forget her completely." "You won't," I promised, "because she's part of you, in your smile and your laugh and the things you love. She's in here." I touched her chest, over her heart. "And that doesn't go away." She considered this, wrote one more thing. "Do you think they're together? Your mama and mine?" I hadn't thought about that. Hadn't let myself think about what came after, because thinking about it made the loss too real. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe they're having tea and talking about us." Mia smiled, a real, genuine smile. She wrote quickly, "My mama would like your mama. They both picked good people to take care of." I had to blink back tears. Yeah, they did. We stayed in the garden until lunch, and I tried not to think about the fact that somewhere in this beautiful house, Dante was dealing with situations that probably involved violence and threats and all the things my mother had tried to protect me from. Tried not to think about the fact that someone wanted to hurt this little girl in my arms. Tried not to think about how much I already cared, how quickly I'd become invested in keeping her safe. Lunch was quiet. Dinner was quieter. Dante joined us but spent most of the meal on his phone, his expression growing darker with each call. After dinner, while I was helping Mia brush her teeth, I heard shouting from downstairs. Mia's eyes went wide. She grabbed my hand, squeezed tight. "It's okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "Probably just business stuff." But when we came out of the bathroom, Marco was in the hallway. "You should keep Mia in her room," he said quietly. Uncle Dante has visitors. What kind of visitors? The kind you don't want a kid to see. I got Mia settled in bed with a book, but she kept looking at the door, kept flinching at every raised voice that echoed up from downstairs. Finally, I made a decision. Stay here, I told her. I'll be right back. She shook her head frantically, grabbed my arm. I promise I'll come back. 5 minutes, okay? She didn't look convinced, but she let me go. I made it halfway down the stairs before I saw them. 3 men in the foyer, facing off against Dante and 4 of his security guards. The men were armed. So was Dante's team. "You're making a mistake," one of the men said. He was older, gray-haired, with a scar across his cheek. "Vincent Russo doesn't forget debts." My blood ran cold. Vincent Russo, the loan shark I owed money to. "Elena Chen's debt is paid," Dante said, his voice like ice. "I have the receipt. She doesn't owe Russo anything." "Russo says she does. Says there's interest, penalties for early payment. Says she owes him $6,000 now." "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works." The man smiled, and it was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. "You don't get to swoop in and play hero. She borrowed from Russo. She pays Russo. And if she can't pay," he shrugged, "well, Russo collects what he's owed, one way or another." I should have stayed upstairs, should have kept my mouth shut, should have remembered that I was just the maid, that this wasn't my world, that I didn't have any power here. Instead, I walked down the rest of the stairs. "I don't owe Russo anything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The debt was $3,000. Mr. Moretti paid $3,000. We're done." All eyes turned to me. The scarred man looked me up and down like I was merchandise. "Well, well, the girl herself." He took a step toward me. "You know what Russo does to people who don't pay?" "I know what he threatens to do," I said. "I also know that if he touches me, he'll have to answer to Mr. Moretti, and I don't think he wants that problem." The man laughed. "You think hiding behind Moretti's skirts is going to save you?" "I think I'm not hiding behind anything. I think I paid my debt, and you're trying to extort money that isn't owed. I think you should leave before this gets ugly." "Before it gets ugly?" He moved closer, and I saw Dante's security team tense. "Little girl, you don't know what ugly looks like." "Actually," I said, "I've been looking at it for the past 5 minutes. It looks like a coward who threatens women because he's too weak to face real opposition." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. The scarred man's hand moved to his gun. Dante's security raised their weapons. And I stood there, wondering if I'd just gotten myself killed on my second day on the job. Then Dante spoke, and his voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Touch her, and I'll burn Russo's operation to the ground. I'll dismantle everything he's built, piece by piece. I'll make him watch while I destroy his life, and then I'll let him live with the ashes." He moved to stand beside me, and I felt the barely controlled violence radiating off him. "Tell Russo that Elena Chen is under my protection. Tell him that her debts are paid. Tell him that if he sends anyone to this house again, if he so much as speaks her name, I will consider it a declaration of war." The scarred man stared at Dante, and I saw the moment he realized this wasn't a bluff. "Russo won't like this." "I don't care what Russo likes. Get out of my house." They left. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. Dante turned to me, and I expected anger. Expected him to yell at me for interfering, for making things worse, for stepping into business that wasn't mine. Instead, he said, Are you okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Your mother would have done the same thing. Really? She once told a rival family's enforcer that he had the manners of a feral dog and the intelligence to match. To his face, while he was holding a gun. Dante shook his head. I thought I was going to have to start a war over it, but he was so shocked that he just left. Despite everything, I laughed. You should get back to Mia, he said. I'm sure she's worried. I started toward the stairs, then stopped. Mr. Moretti? Dante, he said. If we're going to be starting wars together, you should call me Dante. Dante, I repeated. Thank you for paying the debt, for protecting me. You saved my daughter's life. It's the least I can do. He paused. Though I'd appreciate it if you didn't make a habit of antagonizing armed criminals. I'll try to restrain myself. I went back upstairs and found Mia exactly where I'd left her, clutching her book with white knuckles. When she saw me, she dropped the book and launched herself at me. I told you I'd come back, I said, holding her close. She pulled back and grabbed her notebook. What happened? Just some business stuff, nothing to worry about. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but wasn't going to push. We read stories until she fell asleep. I stayed in the chair again, but this time I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Vincent Russo and the scarred man and the way Dante had stepped beside me without hesitation. I kept thinking about the fact that I'd been here 2 days and I'd already made enemies. Kept thinking about the fact that I should be terrified, should be planning my escape, should be running as far from this world as possible. But when I looked at Mia sleeping peacefully, when I thought about the way she'd smiled in the garden, when I remembered the relief in Dante's eyes when she'd asked him to stay for pancakes, I knew I wasn't going anywhere. The next week passed in a blur of routine. I woke with Mia, had breakfast with the family, spent mornings in the garden or the library, had lunch, spent afternoons doing lessons. Mia was technically homeschooled, and I was apparently now her teacher as well as her caretaker. Evenings were for dinner and stories and the slow, patient work of helping a traumatized child feel safe again. Dante kept his promise. He had breakfast and dinner with us every day. He cut his meetings short. He turned off his phone during Mia's bedtime routine. And slowly, gradually, Mia started to let him back in. She let him read her a story, let him tuck her in, let him hold her hand during a thunderstorm. She still didn't speak, but she smiled more, laughed more, silent laughter, but laughter nonetheless. Mrs. Castellano watched it all with barely concealed resentment. She corrected everything I did, criticized every choice I made, and made sure I knew that I was temporary, an interloper, someone who didn't belong. I ignored her and focused on Mia. Marco became an unexpected ally. He was 17, sharp as a blade, and clearly being groomed to take over some aspect of the family business. But with Mia, he was gentle, patient. He taught her card tricks and let her paint his nails and made her laugh. She's different with you here, he told me one afternoon while Mia was napping. Lighter. She's healing. So is Uncle Dante. He gave me a considering look. You're good for them. I'm just doing my job. No. You're doing more than that. You care. That's rare in this world. I didn't know what to say to that. 2 weeks after I arrived, Dante asked me to join him in his office after Mia was asleep. I found him standing by the window again, silhouetted against the city lights. I found who tried to kill Mia, he said without preamble. My stomach dropped. Who? My brother-in-law, Mia's uncle. He thought that if Mia died, he'd inherit everything. Didn't realize I'd changed my will after my wife died. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless. He hired someone to cut the pier, paid the nanny to look the other way. Where is he now? Somewhere he can't hurt anyone ever again. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know. Is Mia safe now? Safer. There are always threats, always people who want to use her to get to me, but the immediate danger is gone. He turned to face me. I wanted to thank you for keeping her safe, for helping her heal, for... He stopped, seemed to struggle for words. For giving her back to me. You never lost her. I did. The moment her mother died, I lost myself in work, in revenge, in everything except being her father. And by the time I looked up, she was drowning, and I wasn't there to save her. His hands clenched. You were there. You jumped. You didn't let go. Anyone would have. Stop saying that. His voice was sharp. Stop diminishing what you did. You saved her life. You're still saving her life every single day. You matter, Elena. To her, to this family, to... He stopped again. To? I prompted. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, stood close enough that I could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. To me, he said quietly. You matter to me. I should have stepped back, should have remembered that he was my employer, that this was a line we couldn't cross, that I was the maid and he was the most powerful man in Chicago. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. Dante, I know, he said. I know this is complicated. I know there's a power imbalance. I know you might feel obligated because I pay your salary. I know all the reasons this is a terrible idea. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. But I need you to know that you're not just the maid. You're not just Mia's caretaker. You're the first person in 5 years who's made me feel like I'm more than just the monster everyone thinks I am. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things. To protect your daughter, to protect your family, that doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. He closed his eyes, and I saw the weight he carried, the guilt, the fear, the desperate hope that he could be better, do better, be worthy of his daughter's love. I'm not asking you for anything, he said, opening his eyes. I just needed you to know that you matter, that you've changed everything. Before I could respond, before I could process what was happening, an alarm started blaring. Dante's whole demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the dangerous one. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward the door. What's happening? Someone breached the perimeter. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. He was gone before I could argue. I stood frozen for exactly 3 seconds. Then I ran. Not to safety, to Mia. I burst into her room and found her sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. I grabbed her, pulled her into my arms. It's okay, I said, even though I had no idea if that was true. It's okay. I've got you. Marco appeared in the doorway, a gun in his hand. We need to get to the safe room, he said. Now. I followed him through hallways I'd never seen before, downstairs that led to a basement I didn't know existed. He pressed his hand to a scanner, and a hidden door opened. Inside was a room that looked like a luxury bunker. Comfortable furniture, supplies, monitors showing every angle of the house and grounds. On the monitors, I could see Dante's security team engaging with intruders, could see gunfire, could see people falling. Mia buried her face in my shoulder, shaking. "It's going to be okay," I told her, holding her tight. "Your papa is going to handle this. We're safe here." But I watched the monitors and wondered if I was lying. The fight lasted 15 minutes. It felt like 15 hours. When it was over, Dante appeared on the monitors, covered in blood. I couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. He came down to the safe room himself, opened the door with his own code. His eyes went straight to Mia. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Elena?" "We're fine. Are you?" "It's not my blood." He moved closer, and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "It was Russo. He sent a team to take Elena. Thought he could force me to pay by kidnapping her." "Did you?" "He won't be sending anyone else. Ever." I understood what he wasn't saying. Vincent Russo was dead. "I'm sorry," Dante said quietly. "I'm sorry I brought this into your life. I'm sorry you're in danger because of me." "I'm not sorry," I said, surprising myself. "I'm not sorry I'm here. I'm not sorry I saved Mia. I'm not sorry I stayed. I'm not sorry." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. Mia pulled back from my shoulder and looked at her father. Really looked at him. Then she held out her arms. Dante crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms. And I saw him break. Saw tears stream down his face as he held his daughter and whispered words in Italian that I didn't understand but felt in my bones. Marco touched my shoulder. "We should give them a minute." We left them there and went back upstairs. The house was a disaster. Bullet holes in walls, blood on the floors, broken furniture. "This is going to be a lot of cleanup," I said numbly. Marco laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Welcome to the family." The next morning, I woke in my own bed for the first time in 2 weeks. I'd spent every night in Mia's room, but last night Dante had insisted I get real sleep. I found them in the kitchen, Dante and Mia, making pancakes together. Mia stood on a stool, carefully pouring batter onto the griddle while Dante supervised. They looked like a normal father and daughter, like the violence of the night before had never happened. Mia saw me and waved, pointed to a chair. I sat and Dante put a plate of pancakes in front of me. "She wanted to make you breakfast," he said, "to say thank you for keeping her safe." Mia climbed down from her stool and brought me her notebook. "You jumped into the water for me. You stayed with me every night. You ran to me when the bad men came. You didn't let go." "Never," I said, my voice thick. "I'll never let go." She wrote something else. "I love you." I started crying. Couldn't help it. Just started crying right there at the kitchen table. Mia climbed into my lap and hugged me, and I held her and cried and didn't care that Dante was watching. When I finally pulled myself together, I found him smiling, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "What?" I asked. "She hasn't said that to anyone since her mother died. Not even me." I looked down at Mia. "Really?" She nodded and wrote quickly. "I was scared if I loved someone they would leave. But you keep staying." "I'll always stay," I promised. She wrote one more thing and showed it to her father. "I love you too, Papa." Dante's face crumpled. He pulled both of us into his arms and held on like we were the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. We stayed like that for a long time. That afternoon, Mrs. Castellano handed in her resignation. I can't work in a house where the help forgets their place, she said coldly. Then it's good you're leaving, Dante replied without looking up from his paperwork. Because in this house, Elena isn't the help. She's family. Mrs. Castellano left with her spine rigid and her dignity intact. I became the official head of household staff, though I had no idea what I was doing. Rosa helped. Marco helped. Even Dante helped, pulling out old notes my mother had left about how to run the house. Slowly, I figured it out. Slowly, we became a family. Mia started speaking again 3 months after I arrived. Her first word was my name. Elena, she said at breakfast one morning, and the whole table went silent. Yes, sweetheart, I managed. Can you pass the syrup? I passed the syrup with shaking hands. By dinner, she was talking in full sentences. By the end of the week, it was like she'd never stopped. The doctors say it's a miracle, Dante told me that night. We were in the garden, our spot now, where we talked after Mia went to bed. They said she might never speak again. She just needed to feel safe. She needed you. He turned to face me. We both did. 6 months after I arrived, Dante asked me to dinner. A real dinner, just the two of us. We went to a restaurant that overlooked the city, and we talked about everything except the family business. We talked about books and music and childhood memories. We talked about my mother and his wife and the people we'd lost. We talked until the restaurant closed. On the drive home, he took my hand. I know this is complicated, he said. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel. What do you feel? Like I've been drowning for 5 years, and you jumped in and pulled me out. He brought my hand to his lips, like you didn't let go. I kissed him, right there in the back of his car with the driver pretending not to notice. I kissed him and felt something settle into place. I love you, I said. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you hung up the phone for pancakes. Maybe when you stepped beside me against Russo's men. Maybe the first time I saw you hold Mia. But I love you. I love you too, he said. God help me, I love you too. We told Mia the next day. She looked at us, looked at our joined hands, and smiled. Finally, she said, I was wondering when you two would figure it out. Marco laughed so hard he fell off his chair. 1 year after I arrived, Dante asked me to marry him. He did it in the garden, on the bench where Mia and I had talked about our mothers. Mia was there, holding the ring box. Will you marry us? He asked. Will you be Mia's mother and my wife and the center of this family you've built? I said yes. We got married in the garden 6 months later. It was small, just family and a few close friends. Rosa cried. Marco gave me away. Mia was the flower girl and took her job very seriously. When Dante kissed me, Mia cheered. That night, after the party was over and Mia was asleep, Dante and I stood in the garden and looked up at the stars. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Jumping into the water that day? Never, I said. Best decision I ever made. Even with everything that came after? The danger, the violence, the chaos? Especially because of everything that came after. I turned to face him. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me everything. You gave me more, he said quietly. You gave me hope. You gave me back my daughter. You gave me a reason to be better than I was. We stood there in the garden, in the house where my mother had worked for 15 years, And I thought about the path that had led me here, the poverty, the loss, the desperation. The moment I'd heard a splash and made a choice. The moment I'd jumped without hesitating. The moment I'd decided not to let go. 5 years later, I stood in that same garden watching Mia play with her baby brother. She was 10 now, bright and happy and whole. She still had nightmares sometimes, still remembered the water and the fear, but she also remembered that someone had jumped in. Someone had held on. Someone had refused to let go. Dante came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," I said. "How one moment, one choice, can change everything." "I'm the lucky one," he said. "You saved my daughter. You saved me. You saved this whole family." "We saved each other," I corrected. Mia ran over, our son toddling behind her. "Mama, can we have pancakes for dinner?" she asked. I looked at Dante. He smiled. "We can have anything you want," I said. And we did, because that's what family does. They jump in when you're drowning. They hold on when you're scared. They stay when everyone else leaves. They don't let go. That's what my mother taught me. That's what I taught Mia. That's what we're teaching our children. Love is a choice. Every single day, it's a choice. And I choose this family, this life, this beautiful, complicated, dangerous, perfect life. I choose not to let go.